paint me a picture of your first period? Can you take me back to how old you were? Where were you? Who was around you? Yeah, can you tell me?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm 11 years old. I'm just wrapping up a the first family cottage trip at a new resort. We had a family cottage when I was young. When my grandfather died, he left it to three kids, my mom being one of them, and she kind of got pushed out of the picture. So we lost the family cottage and we were looking for a new place to go in the summer.
Mhm.
And so we found this place. We've just had the most amazing week, met new friends that I, to this day, keep in touch with. Not
Oh.
only the people who are my age, but like their parents. And like, it was the beginning of such a beautiful community and a very important part of my life.
Mhm.
And as we were leaving to drive home, we stopped at the little restaurant in the town. And I went to the bathroom and I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm 11. I'm like, I got my period. So I remember sort of coming back to the table and talking to my mom. I was like, I need you to come with me. Like, we'll figure this out. I don't remember the specifics after that, but I have very clear memory of where I was, my surroundings, who was with me, and sort of what I had just come out of such a profound experience that I didn't know, but that would really shape a lot of my life after that. So it was cool timing.
Okay, and so had you had conversations with your mum prior to that event?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised. I didn't know that it was like you could have your period anytime now, but I kind of understood that it was something that happened.
Mm-hmm.
My mom was super uncomfortable talking to me about it, I think, just in general, but she would buy me like books because I was interested. I'm like, okay, well, I want to understand, right? And so I had like books and a little bit of knowledge, but I didn't have any friends who had had their period or anything like that yet. So I wasn't scared, but I was sort of like, oh, okay, I guess this is it, right?
Yeah, and so how did that conversation with your mum develop as you got a bit older? So now you're 13, 14, 15. Was she still holding back, or was it open, or what happened
Oh,
there?
well, I think for the first, I don't even know how many years, but certainly while I lived at home till I was about 17 or so, if I got my period like at night and I got my sheets dirty, she would like send me to the laundry room with a bar of soap and cold water and like make me clean them, which was so like, looking back, traumatizing. I was pissed off at the time. I'm like, why can't we just throw it in the washing machine? Like, whatever, it's not a big deal. Sorry, I didn't mean to, right?
Hmm.
But looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was a really horrible thing to do to somebody. And it stuck with me, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I recall that quite vividly. Because I don't know if she had shame around it or anger somehow, but it really felt um, like I was being punished.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so how did that then shape your relationship with your period as you then moved into your 20s?
So I had really bad cramps from the get go. It was something that I was just told was part of it. That was part of my family. Um, and I got put on the pill at 14, I think, to sort of manage those cramps. So I was on the pill from 14 till about 30 or so.
Oh,
My,
really?
my whole life. So I never got to really experience the hormonal changes or understand it. Um, but in the later years, I think I just sort of anticipated that I would have a hard week, that it would be a difficult time for me, that I should have PMS. I never really have PMS. I never had uh, bad mental symptoms or anything like
Mhm.
that. I didn't struggle with that, but I always felt like I should, like that was part of it. And I should be crabby and bitchy and need my all and all that stuff because it was sort of the conversation around me like, this is a burden, this is hard.
Mm.
Um, and I was lucky that I didn't have the bad cramps for most of my life. But yeah, I always just felt kind of like, oh, this is a crappy thing. I better get upset about it each month, even though if I had not had that influence, I don't think I would have experienced it as something negative.
Yeah. Wow. That's
Mm.
crazy. You were on the pill for like 16 years.
Yeah, it was a long time. Yeah.
Mm. And
Yeah.
it's lucky, it sounds like your body kind of like adapted to the pill and didn't have extreme reactions to it. So, and then you're able to have two children. So,
I did have some trouble as I came off the pill. I was probably 20. I must have been about 27 or so, actually, as I think
okay.
about that now, because I had my first child when I was 30. And
Okay.
it took us a good like 2 years. We went through fertility because we weren't having any luck. And we didn't end up needing any assistance in the end, but we were going down that road on a list for IVF, like that whole thing. So I always kind of wondered if the length of time that I had been on the pill played any role in that.
Mm.
Of course, the doctors I talked to were like, no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't impact it. It's fine. There's a lot of, I think, misinformation or lack of other options that are presented to young women
Yeah.
at that stage. We just were not taught how. I never knew until, oh God, probably after I had my kids. I didn't even know till after I had my kids that when I ovulate is the time that I can get pregnant. I didn't realize that it wasn't all month, you know? I had no idea.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that there were alternate ways of like controlling conception and different things. It just wasn't a conversation, right? So I think that there was just a lot of like, here's what it is. Uh, this is life. Go for it.
Go for it. Yeah. Yeah. I can
This is how you're gonna
understand.
live it.
Yeah, totally understandable. And you're not alone. Like so
Yeah.
many women have that same story. I remember learning when I was 31 about the ovulation and the cervical fluid, the slippery egg
Yes.
fluid. I was just like, what?
I know. I know.
I'm
And I use
so unconscious.
and I use that a lot now, and I'm so conscious of it now. But I think also the fact that that wasn't ever my experience growing up and in my young adulthood, because I didn't have those changes that were happening hormonally, so I didn't experience that. So I never even it wasn't even a thought, right? But then now I realize all the time because I'm not on any birth control now, and I'm just sort of really introspective about what's happening each day.
Mm,
Hmm.
yeah, very
Cool.
good. And then, did you have any brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I have a younger brother.
A younger brother. Yeah. And did you grow up with your father?
Yep.
Yep. And so how was that in the family with the younger brother and your father? Were you hushed away when you had your period? There's no talk of it. You just silently went on with your business. Like what happened there?
Yeah, so I don't ever remember it being um like intentionally hush hush, but it certainly wasn't discussed in any way. I don't think my brother was ever in any conversations where he would have realized that that was happening. I don't know at what point he was sort of educated on menstrual cycles or anything like that. But I do remember distinctly my dad would would talk about like, oh, now I've got two hormonal women in the house because my mom was in menopause and I was having my period. And I was like, but we're not like everything's fine. We're not, there's nothing wrong. But he kind of made like a bit of a joke about it. And
Mm-hmm.
then he also would make weird comments. He would get very uncomfortable watching TV commercials for tampons or pads. He was like, why do they have to put this on TV? Blah, blah, blah. Like, so inappropriate. Like, just those types of comments, old school guy. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, well, it's not, it's relevant to me. I don't find it uncomfortable. Like, I don't think it's weird.
Mm,
I need these things,
yeah.
but I think he also kind of made me feel like I should think that it was weird. I'm not sure, but I could sense some discomfort from him around it.
Yeah, so that all played into, your that attitude from your dad and then what your mum made you do, and then you're on the pill, and then society's telling you like just to forget about it, and yeah, and then off you go. And so, did you ever know when your mum was on her period when you were younger?
No.
No. And have you ever sensed what her attitude is towards her period?
I think it was something that she wanted to not talk about, wanted to not experience. Um, she isn't the type of person to complain if there's something bad happening physically. She's got a lot of physical stuff that she deals with. So if you know, she's got her period. She probably wasn't pleased about it and waited for it, you know, dreaded for it to come and wanted it to go. But I never heard her talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah. But also, she went through menopause at 47 and I was just getting my period. Like I was 11 and she was 47. So it was the same year that I started menstruating that she stopped or like started transitioning out. So I don't know that I would have had much realization prior to.
Yeah. And then do you know what her experience was in menopause? What that was
Oh,
like?
yeah. She was very moody. There's, I think, maybe other things going on too, but yeah, we noticed a big shift in how she would uh, react and just act in general. And she definitely had a few years where she was not herself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And have you had a conversation about what you're doing, like, and how you're really tuning in? And I know you've been doing it for a year now, like really tuning into your cycle. Have you ever had a conversation about that with her in the past year?
No, I haven't. But you
No?
know, what's funny is I talk to my daughter about it all
Okay.
the time. So she'll be like, "Are you bleeding, mommy?" Or, you know, because she's 3, so she still comes in the bathroom with me
Yeah.
sometimes, and we'll just talk about it. I'm like, "Yeah, I am now, but it doesn't hurt." And you know, like it's something that happens to grown women and blah blah. And then we just move along. We talk about it like it's just part of life, you know.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
curious, but doesn't really focus on it. And I'm happy to chat with her about it. So I think that at least I'm hoping that she'll come into her own experience with a little bit more awareness and sort of acceptance about, you know, the fact that she's a woman who's going to have a period and it's not going to be a bad thing.
Yeah, doing some reverse role modeling there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and then hopefully with you being so in touch with your cycle as you keep going and keep tuning in, and then you've got your 36, yes, and then as you enter menopause, that you'll be much more connected to your body through this process. That menopause will, you know, like just be a lot more softer to you because you're so connected to your body and you're listening to it, and you'll know how to, you know, navigate the energy of the transition. So yeah, that's yeah, I love that. I think that's so hopeful.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And oh yeah, sorry, go.
Nope. Didn't have anything else. It's just hopefully, well, not hopefully, but I don't think menopause is around the corner for me, but maybe you never know. I'll be ready for it whenever it's here. I kind of look forward to it and kind of not.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna be 42 soon, and it goes so quick. I
Yeah.
can't believe like I'm getting up to those years, and I don't want to lose my cycle at all. Well, I won't. I'll be following the moon cycle, but yeah, it's just gonna be that next stage of life.
Mm.
um, and then what kind of mum was your mum? Like, was she a busy go-getter mum that she had to be busy all the time, or was she like really relaxed, and or was she in the middle? Like, what type of mum was she?
She was kind of neither. She was very overwhelmed a lot. She had super low energy. She suffers from chronic migraines and was in bed a lot, like incapacitated, couldn't live, and so we couldn't make plans in advance much to do fun things because she would always need to say, well, it depends if I'm sick or not, right?
Okay.
So, and she wasn't a very what I'll say, like touchy-feely lovey-dovey kind of mom. You know, she wasn't strict, and but she was definitely more on the cold side than the warm side.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she just felt overwhelmed with everything and couldn't fully um embrace the role.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do you think she impacted your journey as a woman, like in your 20s, and then as a mother? How do you think her conditioning as your mother shaped you?
I think I think I kind of look at life in a bit of a duality in that I have my experience with it. It's also really present in my mind what her experience was and
Mm-hmm.
how that maybe is the should or the like here's my previous conceptions or my programming is probably a good word for it, the subconscious beliefs that I grew up with. But
Yeah.
I'm very aware that my lived experience and my intentional mindset is very opposite to what I grew up with. And so it's a bit of a battle at times. I think that her and I come at situations from different perspectives, and we don't always see eye to eye, but we get along. Like, we're close, in the fact that we see each other often, and she's a big part of my kids' lives, but we're not close, I would say, emotionally close.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of interesting. And so, yeah, growing up, sort of raising my babies up, I've done it very differently than she has. And I know that she's felt, she's just sort of fallen in line with what I want the situation to be, even though it's not how she did it. She's very respectful of how I intend to raise these babies.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's starting to realize, I think, she always comments about what a good mama I am and how lucky they are to have me and all this stuff. But I think a part of her wanted it to be difficult for me because it was difficult for her, you know? And there were times to come to sort of feeling sorry for myself, or feeling, allowing myself to get sucked into the hardness of it, because I just thought that's what was normal. And it was like, oh, I went through this, you'll go through this too, or you'll see it's not like, it's like this, it's like this. And then I did have some postpartum depression with my second. That was pretty bad. And so I battled with that, but I also sort of accepted it, like, oh, this is just what it is, you know? But it wasn't even allowed to be my experience at the time, because my mom got triggered with some like PTSD, postpartum depression at that time. So she was going through the same thing. And so I was looking after her, as well as my new baby, as well as my older baby, with a husband who wasn't super present. And so I had a very difficult time. And I wasn't allowed to just be in my own experience of that difficulty and hardship of motherhood at that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry. What an
Oh,
well, experience you've gone through, but I'm sure you're much stronger. And now, as your mom, as a grandmother, is
yeah.
she still in that chronic illness, and she's in bed, and then you can't plan anything to do with the grandkids, or is it different?
It's different. She's for whatever reason, maybe it's different medications, but she's much more present, and she's much more uh warm and fuzzy now. Like I think she's sort of allowed herself to be more emotionally present, and her, I think, take a focus away from her physical illnesses in such a way that she can impact. But she's definitely healthier than she's ever been, and um she always makes sure that the kids feel really loved and appreciated and like wanted and happy and all of those things while they're with her. Like my daughter went there yesterday for just to bake a cake with grandma, you
Yeah.
know? So
Aw,
yeah.
well,
Yeah.
that's so good. And is your mom and dad still together?
No, my parents separated when I was in university, but they were one of those couples that stayed together for the kids when the kids knew everything was bad. Like they didn't model a healthy relationship for us growing up. We knew that they were not happy in their relationship. So we had not a traumatic home life, but there was always tension, you know? Yeah. So they were never really together, but we always lived together.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then if we were to describe your inner femininity as being open, cooperative, agreeable, going with the flow, creative, intuitive, nurturing, there's some of the words that come up for inner femininity. How in touch do you think you are with your inner femininity?
Uh, really strongly in touch, I would say. And it's just since I become a mother that I've sort of embraced that in
Yeah.
myself. I was really living in my masculine a lot during my university years and my early career years.
Okay.
Very structure focused, very action oriented, didn't allow myself a lot of rest. I craved structure, and it felt really natural to live that way.
Yeah.
And so that's just what I did. And then since becoming a mom, I've really leaned into more flow and creativity and balance. And I've shifted my whole career into that area. And I've been very conscious about how I raise the kids, especially, I'm not sure if I mentioned this, I may have my eldest son's autistic. And so I have specific things that I've learned about how to help him, which have really helped me open up. And it's just helped me a lot with getting in touch with my own self, but connecting with him, and everything feels a lot more, I'm a lot more in tune with myself, I would say.
Okay. And you said when you're in your masculine, it wasn't just a natural state for you to be like that. Was there anything other influences making you be like that? For example, your parents or society around you, or you, I don't know what it is. Was there any other, what was making you really be like that, do you think?
I'm not sure. I think part of it was probably that I was the oldest child, and so I always sort of had this stricter version of my parents. You know, like parents are always easier on their second kid because the
Yeah.
first you're testing out, right? So I always kind of got like the more strict version, and I was very good in school, and so that was something that was always really valued in my household. Um, sort of an expectation, not really ever verbalized, I don't think, but that I would go to university, and I chose to go to business school because I didn't know what else I wanted. I didn't think that I had an option to do anything that was in a creative realm, or I hadn't ever really allowed myself to explore that. Um, and I think the group of friends I was with was also very academically focused, and so we worked hard. You know, we had fun, of course, um, but it just felt like one of those things where I was expected to go to school, do well, go to university, do well, start working, wear a suit, have a briefcase, do the handshake, that whole thing. And in the meantime, like, I have my eyebrow pierced and my hair is blue, and like I'm trying to express myself in other ways, but my I never really broke free of that expectation of like, this is how, grown-ups are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow,
And
very interesting. You had blue hair and a pierced eyebrow. I
yeah,
can't imagine that.
I had like 13 piercings at one point, and then I started getting tattoos. My parents were like, "Oh my God, like this girl," but I was still like working at an accounting firm, and like doing the yeah. So it was an interesting thing, and I remember when I was young, I had such a love for creative writing,
Mm,
and I still do. Like I have a book that I'm publishing this year finally. So that's all kind of come to fruition. It's something that I've been working on for like 20 years here and there. But that's always been a part of my feminine creative that I've sort of kept.
okay.
Um, yeah, but
That's super cool. Yeah. I'm glad you haven't forgotten that. That's cool.
yeah.
Yeah. And so with all those inner femininity traits, how do they show up in your everyday environment? Like with what you do, or in your personality, or in how you talk?
I'm very what's the right word? I'll give you some examples. I don't know what the word to describe it would be. Like, I call my kids babe or baby or love, or like I use sort of really uh,
Endearing? Endearing?
endearing words for them, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, so that's been cool because, and specifically, I like to do, it feels natural, but it specifically is the opposite of what I grew up with. Like, I remember being at a friend's house and her mom called her babe, and I was like so uncomfortable. Like, I just felt like I had a visceral reaction to this like endearing love term from mother to child. And I was like, oh, this feels out of whack with life. Like, I can't believe that just feels, I don't know, somehow different. And so I'm really I try to be very expressive
Hmm.
all the time, and I have a lot of open communication. It's something I focus on a lot, and talking about feelings. And I tend to go through the day with a lot of flexibility. Of course, when the babies were young, I had a lot of structure around like eating and feeding and sleeping and all that stuff, but we kind of go with the flow. And I very much encourage them to be themselves, which is super intentional too. If they're having a day where they're feeling super silly, then let's go be silly. Or if they want to have some time where they're more quiet, like I'll encourage them to go and stand by themselves a little bit. And we work on a lot of things that feel more feminine and more in touch with themselves.
Mhm.
And so it comes out a lot in the role I play as mother. And I find, so I have half the day with my kid, half the week with my kids, and
Mhm.
half the week without. And I'm really still very uh, masculine energy when I'm without the kids. It's very interesting.
Okay.
So those are the times I work hard in my business. I'm up at 5, putting in the hours before I go to my 9 to 5 job.
Mhm.
Um, I'm I just feel very action oriented and
Mhm.
rigid, as opposed to when I've got my kids, I'm more in a flow and I'm more um, I don't know, the energies are very different.
Wow, that's so interesting to observe. But it works
Mm,
well for you because like, when you have kids, you got limited time to be able to focus on things and do things. And
uh,
you kind of like are in that masculine to make the most of it, do you feel, of that time that you have without them?
Definitely. And it's been such a blessing because it's only been since it's been about a year now, I would say, that I've had this on off situation. Before then I was just full time with them, and had, a husband in the house who wasn't very helpful. So I was just full time with them all the time and didn't get a break. And I've realized now how much I need that separation to be
Mm,
able to sort of embody different parts of myself, and have um, one doesn't feel more real than the other or more authentic, but to be able to have both versions of me,
mm.
um, and have time for that and space for that's been really important.
Yeah, yeah. You're using the gifts, like you're making the most out of the situation and using the gifts out of it as well. Like you're finding the positives and the blessings. Yeah. I just want to quickly go back to you said that I think I got this right. You saw when you were younger a mother say to her younger child, babe, or something, and you were like, you reacted and were horrified. But you say that now to your children. So it
Yeah.
did impact you, really.
So,
Like you were like, I want to be that type of mom.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, did I get it right? Yeah.
Yeah. And it just felt like, and her, like, in the same mom, the same situation, might have even been the same day, I don't know, but like, we would dance around and sing and be silly, and that wasn't ever encouraged at my house. Like, I never saw my mom sing and like dance around a room, right? But we would do
Yeah.
that. I didn't know how to be expressive like that. I felt uncomfortable with a grown-up acting like that. Like, I felt like I want to like it, but it feels so weird because I've never allowed myself to sort of see this different side, or let myself um be silly, maybe, with a grown up. Like, I would be silly as a kid, but it just felt like a um different time and place for it.
Yeah. So
So
when you got your kids, were you able to drop easily into that when you had your kids into that creative, the playfulness?
no, I wasn't, but I remembered it was always top of mind that I wanted that experience for them. I wanted them to have that comfortable openness where they didn't feel like there was anything that they should be like uncomfortable doing or saying. And so I worked at it and I made a conscious effort, and now it feels second nature. Like, now it's just authentic, but it did take some effort to get there.
Yeah, well done. What a journey you've been on, and you've really connected to that inner girl, the young girl, and the playfulness and the yeah, I love it. That's amazing. Very
Hmm.
good. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so then how would you describe how your mother is connected to her own femininity, especially as what you saw growing up? Do you think she was connected to her own inner femininity? Remember, inner femininity.
No, not at all. And I don't think that she would even realize that that was a thing that she could connect to. I don't think she grew up in the 50s and 60s with a very um, sort of well-to-do British family. It was very like, they had fun and whatever, but it was it was more proper. It was more traditional. I don't think that they were encouraged to like talk about their feelings, right? Like her mom was was very much like me, like a lovey-dovey kind of like maternal, nurturing kind of mom. But um, I don't know that my mom has ever even considered that she has a feminine side, or like she just kind of floats through life, I think, thinking that it kind of happens to her rather than her understanding that she has some control or some like that she has the ability to control her thoughts, or I don't think she understands any of that.
Yeah. And so do you feel that because she was so a bit disconnected from her inner femininity, that you took maybe on some of her patterning, especially from in your 20s when you're in that masculine role and you wanted structure and you wanted to control things? And do you think that was
Yeah.
part of your mom's conditioning coming out there?
Yeah, definitely. It absolutely was. And I still take on a lot of her beliefs that I don't realize I'm holding them as mine. Like a lot of her, I've recently realized this through a lot of work, but her money beliefs I held on to, but they're not my money beliefs, but I didn't know that for a long time.
Yeah.
Uh, like scarcity and just fear that there's not enough and all of these things. But that's never been my experience. I don't know, but both my parents sort of had that attitude. And I carried that with me for a long time. And I've realized that that's not mine to hold. And
Mm,
there's been other things like that from my mom where there's like, sometimes there'll be tension towards my dad, or like feelings of resentment or hurt or something that I'm like, I don't understand where this is coming from. This doesn't feel like it's mine, but I'm struggling with it. And then I've realized, like, oh, this is hers. It's
yeah.
not mine. It's hers. I need to sort of like her. So that's been really interesting lately, to have that realization that a lot of those things that she has experienced or programmed to me, or what her version of life and reality is, I've really taken to heart. And I'm just now sort of cutting the cords and separating that and allowing myself to be like, no, here's what I actually think,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Amazing. And then just one question about your dad is, how do you think your relationship with your dad affected your attitude towards men?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm not sure. My dad was always a present parent. Um, he worked, but he was always sort of there to do, he was there at dinner and he was there at games and whatever activities I had going on. He was always, um, he knew all my friends and my boyfriends, and he never had any real objections to anything. He didn't have any conversations with me about like, I don't think this person is the right one or anything like that, or like, yes, we love this person or whatever the case. And so I think I would wonder how that impacted my choices. I'm not sure that it did. I think that I had a lot of freedom just to make my own choices because I didn't have any sort of preconceived programming from dad on that regard.
Hmm.
Um, which is funny because he's a pretty controlling kind of guy. He likes to have control of the situation all the time, right?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, but no, I don't know that it did. I think that the one thing that I will say though is seeing my parents in sort of an unhappy relationship allowed me to stay in my own unhappy relationships longer than was healthy,
Hmm.
not realizing that I had an option otherwise, and not necessarily realizing that I had a choice
Hmm.
almost. And my dad was somebody who also felt very much like this is just life. It's hard. I go to work at a job I hate every day. I'm living in a household with a woman I don't love. So I can be with my kids. Like, I'm not really that happy. I didn't see him with lots of friends. So I think he felt very much like life is crappy. This is just what it is.
Hmm.
Um, and so I don't know if maybe I took that into my relationships, thinking like, oh, well, this is just what it is. I can't expect it to be great. I can't expect to get everything I want. I can't expect that I'll find someone who checks all the boxes.
Hmm.
And so, but now I have, and so I understand that I can ask for that, and I do deserve that, and it is possible, and all these wonderful things. But it took me, a lot of time to get there.
Yeah. Okay. And so just to wrap it all up, with all this work that you're doing on your inner femininity, and when that happens, we can attract the masculine. And so that doesn't just have to be a relationship, because I know you're in a relationship, but it can mean like material success or whatever you want to manifest in this life. So what do you want to, manifest? What do you want in your life right now?
I want the freedom, time, choice, and financial freedom. And I want that through being able to take control of my own work. So I want to grow my business so that I can support myself and my family through just that income, so that I don't have to work for somebody else and their dream, that I can fully just be in mine and be able to have the flexibility within my day to go about how I'm feeling each day. So if my kid's sick and I don't have to worry about being home and sort of like chilling with them, or if I feel like I need to move my body, I can go to the gym in the middle of the day.
Mm.
Or if it's a day where I'm just like jazzed up and I want to work for 18 hours, to be able to do that. And so that's my big goal, is to bring in this freedom in sort of all aspects of the word through a business that serves women, so that I feel good about what I'm doing, and I'm raising the vibration and transforming lives and helping in such a way that fills me up, but fills them up, and
Mm.
supports me financially to be able to continue to do that work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. I love it. Well, it's grounded into the universe, and
Hmm.
let's make it happen.
That is the goal.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being so open and honest in your journey. It was so inspiring to listen to. It's like you've had a spiritual awakening. When do you
Hmm.
think you had that? What age, and what happened for that?
It's funny because I was literally thinking about that yesterday. I think it's been very gradual, but I think it's just been in the last 2 years, but
Okay.
really the last year. Yeah. And I keep
Wow.
diving deeper and learning more, but it's very recent. But there wasn't any moment, I don't think,
Yeah.
just as I learn and grow and stay curious. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what it's all about. It's your attitude, that curiosity. And that's why I'm so attracted to you, because you're so curious, and I love women
Mhm.
like that. And you're also willing to do the work. So you're very rare. Very rare.